Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Alberts, and welcome to the pregame and halftime show on USBN Sports. And I'm joined by the head coach of the Anderson Redskins, Evan Dreyer. And Evan, last week you were supposed to have a bye, and then last minute, about Thursday late afternoon, you got a game with Withrow High School. Talk a little bit of how that materialized.
Fairborn canceled due to COVID versus Withrow, and I wanted to play a game, Dan. I wanted to be able to look at our seniors and say that we gave you every opportunity to play week in and week out. And I'm very thankful that Withrow agreed to play us within the 24-hour span. And it was a great night for us, but it was one of those things where we got to play a lot of guys. Everybody on our team got in, and we came out healthy.
Yeah, you're saying that. That's kind of funny because, I got kind of a late notice on it, too, to see if we're going to broadcast the game. And it's funny because I sat there and thought, man, I don't know much about Withrow. It's got to be hard for you. I mean, it was not hard for us, but, harder for you as a staff to have that turnaround and kind of have some kind of an idea with Withrow, what they're about. Was that kind of hard for you guys?
It was fun. It brought back a lot of our coaches about youth football days of how fast you had to get ready. And with that sort of notice, I saw our coaches put a game plan together and really get focused. And it was really good for me to evaluate our staff and to get our coaches ready. Also, our players did a great job and to get ready and to make sure their bodies were ready to play a Withrow team that I think has vastly improved from last year to this year as well.
I was going to say I totally agree with that. They played a lot better. They let's get into the game a little bit. They started off. They scored, first, made it a 6-0 lead, and you guys went on and I think scored 46 straight points, and we're up 46-6, I believe, at halftime. Offense seemed like it was really clicking, and after that initial touchdown by Withrow, you guys really got on a roll.
I think Jackson did a great job of getting the ball out to our guys' hands. I think he only missed 3 or 4 passes the entire night. And we did a really good job after being down 6-0, facing a little adversity, which I really wanted to see our kids get versus Withrow. And we got some 3-and-outs. We got some turnovers. And I like the way we finished the half. We got the ball on a kind of onside kick, and then we were able to convert a field goal. And it was really, really good for us to do a lot of different things in that game, a lot of different situational work, Dan, that we needed.
Yeah, and that's just getting ready to talk about some of those guys. You had some injuries at the wide receiver position, and you had a couple guys that stepped up that I know you've seen them on Saturdays, but Santos Alvarez and Miles Haven, both guys that have probably been playing a little bit more JV, stepped in and did a really, really nice job. 2
sophomores, I think, are very, very athletic and physically they're there speed-wise, but can they withstand 10 straight ball games of varsity level? They're not there yet, and as we go throughout the season, we want to put them in more, and I'm happy that our guys got out there and played really, really hard, and Santos got a touchdown and Miles got a touchdown, but to see them go against some really, really good athletes was really good for us to evaluate.
One thing that I noticed during that game is Brody Foley. I noticed how well he was doing blocking when he wasn't involved in catching a pass, and that's a thing that I don't think I know that most people might not look at. You as a staff does, and as a broadcaster, I noticed that he did a really, really good job blocking.
Brody Foley is vastly improved from week 1 to where he is now, Dan. I think he's playing offense, defense, special teams. He's a great athlete, but I think what he's done to our team with his work ethic and his leadership is even better than what he's doing on the field. I think he's doing a great job of trying to help our team out and getting our locker room and our juniors and seniors and getting them together so we have a team chemistry moving forward and getting ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, we always talk about, Jackson Kuhn, again, he had a solid game. You were right. He was 22 for 26, 257, 2 touchdowns. But like you said, you got some of the younger kids. And so we like to take the opportunity to talk about some of these younger kids. And you had Griffin Scaife, I think is that how you say his name, came in the game, 10 for 14, 150 yards, and a touchdown. So it was really nice to see these kids get in at the varsity level against a team like Withrow with that team speed, and he did a really nice job.
Griffin has a heck of an arm. His release is kind of Bernie Kosar-esque for all those guys that remember Bernie Kosar. But the ball comes out of his hands very different than the previous guys we've had. And his arm strength probably is comparable to Jay. And his football knowledge is vastly improved. I think him and Jackson are very, very good in our quarterback room. But Griffin did a really good job of controlling the game, getting the ball out. And I'm very impressed with how he's developed. If we had to take a vote, he'd probably be the most developed, most improved guy in our program from last year to this year in physicality as well as his football knowledge.
Yeah, that was great to see. And then, let's flip it on the defensive side before we get into Teays Valley. You guys did a really nice job, I thought, defensively. You held them, I think, to 269 total yards. But, again, solid performances. You have Billy Nutt and Mullenkamp did a really, really nice job for you. And they're pretty much solid throughout this year.
Our pass defense and third down defense has to be improved, Dan, if we're going to make a run throughout the playoffs. And I think that's why I wanted to make sure versus Woodrow that our pass defense was better. And, to go down 6-0, I was like, man, this is why I scheduled the game. And I wanted to make sure that we were able to defend the pass. And we stepped up after that first series to be able to get that convincing lead. But our defensive back play is getting better with Miles Glenn-Walker, Max Mullenkamp, Billy Knott, and Wyatt Holt. But I think that's the part where we get 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10, 3rd and long. We got to get off the field. We can't allow them to convert. So
let's get into so obviously this now is playoff week, and you play a team called Teays Valley, and they won big last week, 68-0. They're 3-3. They're in the I think they're in the Mid-States League, and they're from Asheville, Ohio, and they have been conference champs 5 times since 2014. So they're a good team. I think their coach is from Talawanda High School, played at Capital, I believe. And also former player that played there was Chad Pennington. I'm not sure if that's the same Chad Pennington that everybody's familiar with. But talk a little bit about, Teays Valley. I think that from what I heard from Coach Fern Soriano, they're kind of similar, I guess, in opponents to West Claremont as far as offensively.
They're a throwback team, Dan, and I think that's the hardest thing to get ready for them is they're going to control the ball. And you're not going to see many plays from them. They're going to line up and come right at us, and we got to get off the field. Their rushing attack is dynamic. We got to be able to stop the two. We got to be able to stop the fullback, the old fullback trap, fullback dive, halfback ISO. Very similar to what Coach Siriano brought here in the 80s. And It's going to be one of those things where we got to be able to tackle and get off blocks. And I think their quarterback does a really good job of getting outside the pocket and scrambling, as well as quarterback designed runs. And so I think it's very, very different to face them, which I think is very, very fun for our kids to be able to play a playoff game versus a different team that we haven't seen. And defensively, it's a 4-man front. They don't blitz, and they're going to say, hey, you guys are going to screw up. They're going to keep everything in front of them, and they do a really, really good job of that, of not allowing explosive plays, of saying, hey, you guys can go on an 8 to 10 play drive. Will you screw up before you get a first down, or you're going to be able to punt on and I think that's the biggest thing is that it's two kind of clashes. It's very slow game for them, and we're going to try to speed the game up. We got to get 12 to 14 possessions in a game, and they're right around 8 or 9 possessions for a game.
Yeah, they're one of the common opponents that we did play was Kings. They played Kings, and Kings, I think, had them like 41-0, and Teays Valley scored at the very end to make it 41-10. Defensively, you kind of said about I think you said a 4-man front. Talk a little bit about them and what kind of challenges present that to you with your offense.
I think the biggest thing is that they play a couple guys both ways that are super athletic. Their quarterback plays DB, so he does a really good job of knowing what's coming against him and what we're trying to do. And then they do a lot of twists and stunts with their defensive line to get our O-line screwed up and see if they can get pressure on the quarterback. And I think Kings was able to run the ball with Stiltsky in the first and second quarter and get that lead. But I think our biggest thing is that can we complete the short passes long enough and so we can get them over top for an explosive play.
Could that be something that you could have with, Jackson Kuhn, running the ball, a little bit more, spreading it out, getting him to run the football like he has been here lately?
I think Jackson's been in the zone, Dan, about running the football. I think it's a kind of a senior mentality. Jay Volpenheim as a senior stepped up and ran the ball really, really well. And Jackson's doing the same thing as the season goes on. And we want to make sure he's healthy, but also that his ability to run the football has helped our offense the last few weeks get on track and make sure that we get first downs and 3rd and short.
We talked about your injuries that you had at the wide receiver position. How are you health-wise going in? You're going to have some of those guys back. And also, I know one guy, he ended up going back in the game. How is Noah Habig?
Noah's going to practice. Noah's going to practice all week. And all those guys are back, which is fun because I think the biggest thing about this year, health-wise, the best team, it's got to be, you got to fight health, you got to fight COVID, you got to play the other team. There's so many other little things out there to make sure that our team is ready to go to beat Teays Valley. And
again, real quick, I think probably time of possession and keys of game. Obviously, turnovers are going to be a huge part of this game.
Dan, I think also the key thing I would focus on is time of possession plus 3 and outs. If we can get them 3 and outs early on and go down and score and get a 14-plus lead, I think it gets them out of sync.
Right.
You know, as Coach Serrano is going to tell you about the 1980 style offense that he brought here that Teays runs. They don't want to go fast. They want to go as slow as possible. And I think that's going to be the clash of, can we build a lead? If we turn the ball over and give them a short field, it's going to be a long time before we get the ball back. So we got to do our job and play clean football and get some 3 and outs.
All right, Coach. Well, we appreciate you always taking the time as you have all year, and hopefully tonight we pull out a victory and advance to the next round. So good luck, and we'll talk to you hopefully next week.
Thanks, and go Skins.
Yes, sir. So that's Evan Dreyer and Dan Albers here on the pregame and halftime show. We'll be back with Coach Vince Soriano right after this. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Albers, and welcome to the pregame and halftime show brought to you by USBN Sports. And I'm joined with the former head coach of the Anderson Redskins, Vince Soriano. And Vince, kind of a weird week. We thought we were going to have a bye. We did not do a pregame show because we didn't think we were doing a game. And it was kind of funny. You text me, I think Thursday morning.
Thursday. It was Thursday, yeah.
And then I get a text message at 4:30 saying they're going to play and asked if I could do the game. So talk a little bit about that as being, in this kind of situation. And I think you maybe even talked to Coach Dreyer about that, about picking this game up so late and how to approach that.
Yeah, anytime you pick up a game like they did on a Thursday, you really don't have time to put a game plan together and execute a game plan. So when Coach and I were talking, I just told him, I said, Evan, just if I were in that situation, I would treat it as a scrimmage and worry about more what you want to do and what you want to develop and get practice on than out scheming the other team. Like, these are the things that we have to get good at to win in the playoffs. So this is what we're going to practice.
Right.
These are our base things that we need to do, and just approach it that way. Because that's the way I used to approach a scrimmage. When we would scrimmage, I would never really game plan for the other team. It was just, this is what we have to have ready. I want to see where we are in developing what we're doing on offense and defense, and then go from there. And that's what I told him. Then the other thing in a scrimmage that you do is you play a lot of people. So I in my conversation with him, I said, I would, if you get a lead, I would start subbing in a lot of people, get a lot of people some work, save some of your starters a little bit, and don't make them play the whole game, and approach it like that. Because again, that's how we would approach a scrimmage. So, you just want to find basically what is their basic offensive concept, what is their basic defensive concept. And these were things that if we were playing this type of defense that we would do, and that's what you do. Plus we've got to look at our things that are the mainstays of our offense and defense and get some reps on those things. So that's how we would approach it.
Yeah, and it was, the other thing too is obviously you don't want those injuries to some of those starters, and that's kind of a risk that you're taking by playing this. And there was a point in one game when Noah Habig, their big offensive lineman, went down, and I was like, oh man. And he ended up being fine, but that's just, I get that you're gonna play that extra game, but there's always that scary part of somebody getting hurt.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's pros and cons to doing that. So you try to be in the middle of the road. You try to play them a little bit, get them some work, but not too much. It's a risk. So yeah, that's a fine line.
Yeah, and so going into the game, so they play Withrow, which I have to say they were much better than I thought they were going to be, because I'm not real sure, but they played pretty well, and they took an early 6-0 lead, and then after that Anderson pretty much dominated. I think it ended up being 46-6 at half, and exactly like you said, got some of their kids in, but they looked pretty good after that initial giving up that score. They got to do what they needed on offense.
Yeah, some of the things that I'm looking at, watching, we didn't do a show last week about Milford, but I kind of lumped those two games together of what I'm seeing, that I think that right now Anderson is peaking and they are becoming what I call a complete team. That, their run game has really developed. And so that is added. Everybody knows that Anderson's a passing team and you got to stop the pass. But now the run game is starting to catch up, or has caught up to the passing game, where they have now become a balanced threat to teams as you look at them. I think defensively, when we're talking about peaking, their pass coverage has improved immensely from the beginning of the year. When you watch other teams throwing the ball, the passes at Anderson, there was always a defender standing beside the receiver, and he's either knocking it down or intercepting it, or if the receiver does catch it, there is no yak, yardage after catch. There is none. They're tackling them right there. So, and then the special teams have gotten better and better, where they're now solid. So when you look at them offensively, Dan, I think they have really improved in the run game. They have really developed the quarterback run game. And then I think Andrew Williams, they've put that emphasis on him running the football in the last two games. And I think that they have really developed that, where now it's not like, oh, well, okay, you got to stop the pass game and every once in a while they're going to run the ball. Now it's, hey, we've got to stop this kid. If we don't devote some time to their running game and have a substantial plan, they are going to run the football all over us. So now that is going to make them really hard to defend. And then another thing that Evans kind of added to the offense in recent weeks is what we used to call the sprint draw out of the shotgun, where he starts to sprint out and the running back takes 2 or 3 steps. We used to call it 26 and 27 draw when I was there. And then he stops and plants and comes back the other way. And it's a great tie-in to the sprint out game, I just think that has helped them in their sprint out game. So those are some things that I see happening, offensively, that maybe they weren't as good at in the beginning of the year from an offensive standpoint.
A couple of things I've noticed too is that Jackson Kuhn, like you said, running the football, he kind of reminds me of Jay Volpenheim from his junior year to his senior year, where he was running the ball. Not that he wasn't running with authority, but he has a lot. It seems like his confidence level, or there's just something different that he is running and he's getting those yards and he's running hard. And not that he wasn't doing that before, but I've just noticed that he's got a different swag to him when he's running the football now. I'm not sure if that's the same with you or not. But then I also noticed that Brody Foley, the H-back, has been doing a really, really nice job for him, blocking not only as that H-back, but also when he's out as a receiver and making those extra yards for those guys when they catch the ball.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on all points. If you were going to ask me to analyze what I see with that situation, that's about exactly what I see. Yeah, I think Jackson's gotten a little bit faster. The more you do something, the more confidence you get. The more success you have at it, the better you get. And I think it's been a chain reaction to that. And one thing has led to another. And I think the team is getting better at blocking the schemes in which he runs the football. And, like one thing I got in my notes that Anderson is really getting good at is the power read with him. And a power read is, it's what people call a dual run, where there are 2 runs blended into one play and the quarterback makes the decision on the fly which one you're going to run based on the defender that you're keying. And a very common one, and one that we used at UC that we actually got from Ole Miss in the spring of 2014 is called the power read, where the offensive linemen block a power play and you do not block the defensive end. In the old days when we played and coached, you kicked out the defensive end. That's the way you ran the off tackle play. Well, today you can do it. You can read him. So they take that jet receiver and they run right towards that defensive end as if he's running the sweep, the jet sweep. If that defensive end goes with him, then the quarterback pulls the ball and runs up inside and runs the power play. And they don't have to kick him out. If that defensive end squeezes down and doesn't want to respect the jet running back, then you give it to him and let him take it outside. And those are called dual runs. And those are becoming very, very big in high school and college football right now. And then the other thing that's happening, you know, everybody's heard the word RPOs, which is a run or a pass that is decided once the ball is snapped. And again, you are keying one defender. And if that defender plays the run, you throw a short pass. If he stays where he is, then you run the football. So, you know, on Spectrum on the game the other night, Tim Bray asked me to explain that because, you know, the audience doesn't know what's the difference between a dual read and an RPO. Well, for our audience, the dual read is two runs, and the quarterback's picking which run to do, and he's involved in it. He's either going to run the ball or give it to the running back, whoever you're in the run scheme with. On an RPO, you're giving it to a run or you're throwing to a receiver. So, and Anderson is becoming really good at that power read play like that. And I think that's a huge plus now.
Yeah, and you know, that is definitely, you know, some awesome stuff. And I think the other thing too, Vince, that was good to see is they had a lot of guys that were hurt. They were trying to get them ready for the playoffs, and a couple guys stepped in wide receiver-wise. Alvarez and Haven both ended up scoring touchdowns. But it was really good to see that, you know, these young kids in the program that have worked and got in there and got some opportunities, and they did a pretty nice job for their first real true varsity experience.
Right. And that's how you develop your program. So your program is successful when you can get your younger athletes work and help to develop them and get them some actual game experience. You know, I mean, that's a key factor in the development of a program.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good job. And on the defensive side of the job, you know, there's one guy that's really stuck out pretty much all year long is Billy Knott. Billy Knott's been playing really well, defensive back for them. Had a couple of nice plays. And like you said, as the season goes on, you've just seen those defensive backs. They're always there. And Billy Knott seems to be one of the guys that's always making a play.
Right. And there was a few things that I had written down as I watched the game on Saturday morning. I think the defense now has become very physical. They are much more physical than they were in the beginning of the year. And I'm not, believe me, I'm not putting any blame on anybody because the way the situation was with the COVID and the way they had to practice, the limited practices, that's natural. That's going to happen to a defense. So it's not anybody's fault. And now their pursuit to the ball is so much better, and their angles to the ball are so much better. You know, they've picked everything up with game speed. I really like the corner and DB play, as I mentioned earlier. But now, if you watched in that Withrow game, Anderson's corners are now starting to play press man, which they weren't doing in the beginning of the year. But now they've developed to the point where press corners for an offensive coordinator and an offensive play caller is the hardest thing to have to deal with. Because one, your receiver has to be able to escape from the corner with his hand movement, ripping up through, slapping hands and swatting over. You know, those things take a lot of work. And then when it's press coverage, you're limited in your routes. You know, your short game is almost pretty much taken away unless you can get inside for a slant. You know, so what everybody tries to do is beat them and go deep and run the fade. You know, and I had that game last week with Wayne and Centerville, and that's how Wayne ended up winning the game. They hit 2 play action fades against press coverage, and the quarterback put it exactly where it had to be, and they won. But your options are very, very limited, and I think Anderson's going to cause people some problems with the ability to play press coverage.
Yeah, that it's definitely nice to see, and so now we're into the playoffs. I know that you have had the experience of calling a game of Teays Valley, who Anderson will play. They played Kings that you had earlier in the year. I know they're 3-3. They beat Columbus Briggs last week, 68-0. They're in the Mid-States League, and that's up in Asheville, Ohio. Talk a little bit. I know they've had some success here. They're 5 times since 2014. They've won the league championship. So, they've got a pretty good program. Just talk a little bit about what you saw in them when they played Kings.
Well, it's a team. Teays Valley is a team that has a good football tradition. Probably their claim to fame is when I was in college, they put an All-American fullback at Ohio State for Woody Hayes named Champ Henson. And Ohio State just dominated with the fullback running game with this gentleman now, he's my age, named Champ Henson. And so they have – football is really important to them. They have a good tradition. So they are going to come down, and they are going to be very motivated to play well. They play hard. When I talked to their coach in the Kings game, he said his 2 main goals were to play physical and play fast. So it wasn't about plays, and it was about their effort. And even though Kings dominated them in the football game, Kings was just better than they played hard the whole game, never gave up, never stopped playing hard, and just played till the final whistle. Now, when you look at them on an offensive side of the ball, if you want me to talk a little bit about them, as I was preparing for them for Spectrum, they are 83% run and 17% pass. Now, they are as old school, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense. They are as old school. They are running a 1970s offense and a 1970 and 1980s offense and a 1970s and 1980s defense. So they are very old school and traditional. They are running what you call a pro, power I, and slot I formation. In fact, the slot I was what I brought to Anderson in 1987, and it was Woody Hayes' offense, and I had learned it at Martins Ferry, ran it at Caddis, and then brought it here to Anderson. Then eventually, we started modernizing, and,
right.
With everything else, football changes, but one thing they do, it's a lot different than what I did in the slot I formation, is they are always running from unbalanced. And for our viewers, what unbalanced means is they are taking 2 tackles and putting them on the same side of the ball together, and then taking the tight end and putting them on the short side, and it's just the tight end and the guard. So if we were formation, we were unbalanced right, obviously your center's in the middle, you have right guard, right tackle, and left tackle together on that right side, and then on the left side you only have the left guard and the tight end. And they're doing that because they want to get a better blocker on that strong side. And then they have a wing back. We used to call him a slot back when I was at Anderson, but they have a wing back and then a receiver. And then they'll change that around, how they do it. They may put him out there and they're in twins. The quarterback, 85% of the time, is under center, old school under center. And they're in the I formation with a fullback and a running back behind each other, just like we were in the I formation for years till we went to the spread in 2000. They run a lot of quarterback boots where he fakes to the tailback or the fullback and he boots out. That means rolls out around the end. And almost their whole offense is play action passes. Now, they will do some sprint outs to try to get him outside the pocket, and they'll lead 2 backs on the defensive end and they try to get him out. Against Kings, they could not get outside the pocket one time. They could not. Kings was getting those ends upfield. They couldn't get the ends hooks. The backs couldn't get them blocked, and the kid was running for his life. So, that their passing game is the weakest part of their offense. they like to run the ball, and they like to run the isolation play where you lead the fullback on the linebacker, and they'll run some power and counter. That's their three base plays. They will use all three backs, though. I mean, I'd say their three main plays are fullback ISO, ISO, power off tackle, and then a fullback dive. So they're going to use all three backs because they're going to run the quarterback outside the pocket. So that's kind of them in a nutshell in terms of that. Do you want me to talk about their defense a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Their defense is old school. For our old-time listeners here, they're in the old 4-4 defense. They got 4 defensive linemen, 2 inside linebackers, and 2 outside linebackers, and they're 3 deep, playing cover 3 deep zone about 90% of the time, the way we did in the old days in the 70s and 80s. Every once in a while, they'll get into 2 high safeties when it's a long yardage, or they think they need to get an extra guy back there. They'll drop that weak side outside linebacker and he'll play safety, but and they'll play cover, what you call cover 4 zone. They will use some linebacker blitzes to get pressure, but it's not a lot. It's probably about 10% of the time. But they do have good team pursuit, and they will run to the football. So, it's going to be interesting, because when they practice every day, they practice against an old style offense. Then they play in games, and you're playing against the modern shotgun. So I think there is one player, that I think Anderson has to watch. I had to pick the player to watch for that game. And they have a junior quarterback named Tyler Love. He wears number 3. He's a 6'1", 160-pound junior. I before the game, when I had that Kings game, I said he's very dangerous outside the pocket, because once he gets outside the pocket, he's very quick. And I think Kings saw that. That's why they never let him outside. That's why they kept blowing their ends upfield, and they kept containing him. I think he is a run-pass threat. The coach felt that he was very football savvy and very smart. And at the time I did the Kings Teays Valley game, he had accounted for 1/3 of their total offense. At that time, he had 335 yards going into the game. So that's about, what I saw with them.
Well, so saying that, Vince, so Anderson obviously likes to go, fast-paced, trying to get, going up. And so do you think it's kind of like that if Anderson would get up on that, let's say a couple score lead, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to try to come back, you think? Or
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened to them in the Kings game.
Okay.
They got behind by 3 touchdowns, and they just don't have the passing attack to come back like that. It just isn't. It isn't multiple enough. And again, I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, because what they do, what they do with their game plan, they do well, and that's what it's all about. But it's not like, now they will go into the shotgun every once in a while, and they'll run some wildcat. They bring in a number 12, and I forget what his name is off the top of my head, but they bring in a number 12, and he can throw from the shotgun. Like, for instance, they get a 3rd and 15, then they will get in the shotgun. But the shotgun's about 15% of their offense, but they can do it.
Yeah.
And then number 12 can either run the ball, they'll have designed runs for him, or he'll throw it. So yeah, they can do that, but that's not their forte.
Yeah, and so one I guess benefit of having the game that they did last week is they did have some of the receivers that were able to sit. Talked to Evan earlier today. All those guys seem to be healthy. Noah Habig is fine, which is a good sign going into the playoff game for Friday night. And it's also nice that you're playing at home. You don't have to do the traveling, so that'll be nice. So what are some of the keys you think for Anderson to pull out the victory tonight?
Well, I think Anderson needs to keep developing their 5, 6, and 7-yard passing game, so they're controlling the football. Anytime a team plays 3 deep, they have loose corners. Those corners are aligning 7 yards off the receivers. You can throw in front of them, and then they have one high safety. You can run seams down the middle of the field. And so I just think Anderson needs to be able to do what they always do. I think that's the key. Control the football a little bit, because they're in the I formation because they want to chew up the clock
Right.
and control the game.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to keep three and out. You've got to stay ahead of the chains is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, and I never did ask you, are you broadcasting a game this week? Who do you have this week?
Yes, we have Elder at Princeton.
Ooh.
Elder at Princeton.
That
So
should be a good one.
a very good football game. And as we are speaking, and I am prepping for that game right now. So,
well, it's, as always, I appreciate doing this. I love, and then hopefully Anderson will get the victory, and then you and I will be back next week to do some updates on that game as well. So hopefully Anderson will pull out the victory and move on to the playoffs.
Yeah, I have one question because I never got a chance to look at the bracket just exactly. If Anderson would win, who do they have the winner of?
I believe it's the winner. I think it's Harrison and Piqua. And if Piqua's the higher seed, I think we have to go up to Piqua. And then if they win that one, they play LaSalle. So.
Okay. You take them one at a time.
That's right. You never know.
I was an old wrestling coach, and I used to tell those wrestlers, just wrestle one match at a time.
Yeah.
When I used to be the head wrestling coach at Martins Ferry, so I was the head wrestling coach for 7 years. So
wow.
I know I know how you take them one at a time in a tournament.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. As always, we appreciate it, and good luck to your game tonight, and hopefully Anderson will win. So for Vince Soriano and Dan Albers, you've been watching the Pure Game and Halftime Show. Back with Game Action right after this.